Hey everyone, it's finally time for the Maximus Apex review. So a quick skim around the board itself. I've left the memory in so that you can see it is only 2 DIMMs. You've got the memory closest to the CPU, it is nice and close to the CPU. Can be too close, which I'll talk to you about in a bit. But then the M.2s both go on this card, and they can only go on the card as well. So you have one on one side and you can put one on the other. There are 2 8-pins up here. One is marked 1 and one is marked 2, but I've tried it and you don't necessarily have to worry about which way round that you put it. Fans wise, you've got one up here, one down the side, although this does say it's an AIO pump. There are 2 more down here. Then the grey, sort of greeny fan headers, they're maximum speed fan headers. For you overclockers, they're amazing. They're going to be so helpful. So you've got one here. So obviously if you had something around the CPU and you just wanted maximum fan speed, that's there. There's another 2 down here, and they do actually call them FS, so full speed. Brilliant. You've got monitoring points here for your voltages, so you can do your volt pre-outs. Yes, that is thermal paste. Then this is for turning off the PCI Express lanes, so you can turn these off individually, although this one is wired into the chipset, as are these 2, and these are from the CPU itself, but they all share the lanes. There's no magical lanes that come out of it. You still only got 16. So it's, yeah, it's more for, yeah, I don't know really, but you've got another fan header here. Up here you've got your PCI poster. You've also got your LED notifications up here, just so that you can get an idea about what, if any issues or what stage of the post that it's on. Then you've got a retry button and the BIOS switch button, start and reset on the board. Now you do get 2 RGBs here, and then there are another 2 RGBs down here. Now they're all 4-pin, they're all the normal RGBs, which is lovely, especially where there's so much RGB on this. If you were going to like use lots of RGB fans, you wouldn't need as many RGB splitters, but there's no addressable RGB, which I thought was kind of weird. You've got 2 USB 2s down here, internal USB 2s, but technically that part of the ROG extension is one as well. You can see you've got another fan here, and then you've got the BIOS switch. Your water cooling zone, you've got 4 SATAs, USB 3. This would be an extra power for your PCI Express, but you don't need to plug this in unless you're mainly like a mega overclocker. So for the average Joe, this doesn't need to be plugged in. Don't even bother, it won't do you any favours. The heatsink around the VRMs looks quite small, but quite deep. This part though is just for aesthetics. It's not touching, it's not attached at all. It doesn't get hot. We'll talk about that in a minute. And don't let the VRM heatsink kind of yeah, make you think it's not going to be that great, because we do need to talk about the VRMs. But it's nice and low, so even if you were going to use an air cooler, you shouldn't get any issues with any air coolers. And you've got all of the fact that they've got all the cutouts means extra surface area. So it's all good. The only thing I've not got attached is you can have another, basically one of these. You can put it down there and you can put your own design on it if you want to. And it does all light up underneath if you want it to as well, as does the heatsink. So there's lots going on, and when we kind of flip it round, there's nothing round there, but it's the easier way to see the cutouts. So you get the idea. So there's, yeah, it's all good. So the area of the videos that I always get a bit of grief about is RGB, because it does split opinion. And at the end of the day, some of you love it, some of you hate it, but it's still a feature that I think does require, you know, bringing up. Now what we can see around the bottom of the board here and down the side is the effect that the RGBs behind give you with that rather kind of unique looking cuts on the board. And I think they're still the only people that are really doing it. You do get it up the side there as well. Now you do get RGBs all over. So you've got them on the chipset, you've got them on this part here, where you've got underneath the CPU. You can have another set down here as well, and as I've said in the box, You can make your own custom tops for them. So there's lots of bits and bobs like that that you can do. Also with the riser card, that's where your M.2s go. They've got RGBs on there as well, but you can turn them all off. You can also see that you've got them hidden around the top of the board. Up there, you can see that they're in there. But the main thing that I wanted to talk to you about while we are here is you can see that the Corsair logo isn't what I would say is the right way round, because the logo is the wrong way up. And that's because the memory is quite tight to the CPU. Now, most of you are probably going to go straight away, oh, that's no good because you can't fit it. But they've put the memory so close to the CPU for better memory performance. And as I'll talk to you about with the IDA stuff in a bit, we didn't really have any issues getting 4000 megahertz running on this. And that's the other reason why there's only 2 DIMM slots. But again, we'll talk about this in more depth in a bit. But, you know, I just want to say, now this is just on the kind of colour phase, rainbowy sort of mode, but you can set them static if you want. There's lots of things that you can do with them strobing and chasing each other, and you know, there's loads of stuff that you can do and play with to your heart's content until you get bored of it and just put them on one colour like most of us do. Okay, so very noisy and unprofessional angle in the office, but we've had Unigine running for ages. And then when I pan round, yes, the AIO is out the top of the case because I'm literally trying to make a worst case scenario. The airflow is even going out this way because we're testing the VRMs. Now, despite the fact that I've got both the probes in there, no airflow, all of that kind of stuff, I'm still struggling, to get the VRMs in roughly the same sort of place that we would have had the normal probe to have been at. I'm still struggling to get it above 50 degrees, and I have tried incredibly hard. I've also tried it with my infrared thermometer over there, and it all kind of pans out as being the same sort of temperatures. I've actually taken heat sinks off and put the probes in underneath, and both of them are showing the same results. So long and short of it is, do the heat sinks work? You're damn straight they do. Okay, so as you can see, we've gone through a lot of grief to get the VRM temps on this, but we got there, we got it done, and it was annoyingly good, to the point that I even went back and started looking at some of the other brands' boards just to double check. I've had the heat sinks off, moved stuff around. I've done everything I possibly could do to try and get as accurate attempts as possible, because it did look a bit too good. So I second guessed myself and went and looked at loads of other stuff just to make sure, and that was the temps that we were getting. They work very well. Now, as you can see in the video as well, we took the AIO out to try and minimise airflow. So the best way I can put it is, if you've got this in a case, because I know some of you are going to be using it on a test bench, but if you're using it on a test bench, you're going to be adding air around there anyway, so that's kind of a moot point. But if you've got it in a case, if you've got top flowing fans, then you'll have no issues at all. You genuinely won't. Even with them set, you know, nice and low, it won't matter. So yeah, that they work annoyingly well. The other thing that I said I talked to you about was the memory, the fact that you've only got 2 DIMM slots, and it comes up a lot, but it's because it's meant to be an overclocking board. Yes, you can use it as a pretty kind of gaming, you know, basis for a funky build or a mod. Yeah, that's all still there. But the 2 DIMM slots is just to make it easier to run higher memory. Now, I have tried to go above the 4000 megahertz mark, but it does get to a point where the scores start to come off again. So basically, it's a bit like when you're overclocking your NVIDIA graphics card. I see so many people saying, oh yeah, I'm getting peaks of 2100 megahertz. And it's just like, peaks mean nothing. You've probably, yeah, it might peak 2100 once, but your mate with 2000 megahertz is going to probably have a higher average than you and is going to run better. It's the same with kind of memory. You can get it to keep going up and up and up and up, and it looks stable because it's passing like mem test and stuff, but the actual bandwidth and throughput actually falls through the floor, because what the boards end up doing is slackening off all of the sub timings so that it will run. So you do have to, as I've said many times before, you do have to run benchmarks each time that you make some changes to watch out for those things. So 4000 was about the point where, yes, it was running and yes, it was good, but you wouldn't wanted to have gone any further, not for kind of benchmarking or anything anyway. 3200 megahertz is a very good point for the average Joe. Buy, click, you know, not have to worry about it. The board won't ruin it, you know, itself with insanely high system agent or VCC I/O voltages. If you're looking for a good middle ground, a decent quality 3600 megahertz kit will serve you very well. But then you've got to kind of think to yourself, you know, about price and, you know, the return on the performance, which is why I always say about 3200 megahertz, because I kind of personally see that as being a really nice kind of stopping point. And if you've got yourself two 16 gigabyte sticks of 3200 megahertz, then you would be absolutely laughing. Anyway, so nicely laid out board, bit of a weird M.2. Yes, I do kind of like understand and get your points, but it all kinds of works, and let's face it, it's all kind of where it needs to be, and it allows us other stuff and space around the board as well without things looking cluttered and full. But the performance side of things, you're all going to be asking about overclocking, and my CPU was the kind of weak point with this, if I'm honest. With auto memory, which is just 2133, we did manage to get 5.1 gigahertz out of the CPU, and it was stable with pretty much everything. And I mean, it passed OCCT as well. But the only thing that we were having issues with was the 4K blender run. It would do the 1080p blender run that we do fine, but with the stresses and the length of the 4K blender run, it was starting to trip up. The X265 benchmark as well could trip it up, even though that's quite a quick one, but that was another one that could make it fall over. It passed pretty much everything else. But anyway, so what we ended up doing was knocking it back to 5 gigahertz. But what we did end up managing to do when we knocked it back to 5 gigahertz with 1.3 volts was we then managed to get 4000 megahertz memory in play as well, and we did still get a boost above what we've seen with some of the other boards. So, but with the 4000 megahertz, yes, it was running, but it had gone up from 3200 megahertz kind of runs, but not a massive amount. So we've done it just to show you that it can be. But if it was me and it was my rig, I probably would have just stuck with 3200 or 3600, as I've already said. It really depends what you guys are wanting to be doing. If you're going to be using it as an overclocking board, then if you do drop 4000 in, those sub-timings are going to be an area that you will want to focus your time on. If you can tighten down those sub-timings, so not the initial kind of 4 or 5 at the top, but the ones underneath, it's a pretty pro area, and it does take a lot of time to get in there and tweak. Quite a bit of experience really as well. But if you do that, you will be able to eke out better memory results with it. But it, like I said, it's not something that the it's probably, I think it is actually the first board I've seen 4000 megahertz stable on, if I'm fair. So it's not something that the board is doing wrong. I'm just giving you areas that if you were a very manual, hands-on person, that would be an area that you could probably get some better scores out of it with. But it would take you quite a bit of time, you know, pen and paper, writing the stuff down as you're going along. It's certainly not something I've got a couple of days to sit there and spend on, you know, just on a review. But anyway, so memory performance, as you can see, and we've only done overclock tests on this because I don't see the point in having a board like this and then running stock results. I genuinely don't. But it topped the graph. But then again, as I've said, that's because we were running 4000 megahertz. So unless it was running 4000 megahertz badly, and that would be my fault, then it should be at the top. Blender, again, don't forget, this is one of the ones where it's a really, really stressful test. But also, if you have a look at the Blender stuff, it's like decimal points between them. It's like tenths. There's really not a lot. So if you have a look, they are quite close, but it didn't top this. But then again, with this, it's not really like a number cruncher or anything particularly like that. But yeah, anyway, it did well, but not epically. X265, weirdly, it was beaten by the Prime. Prime with the overclock, but that was like the really, really early days clock. And I to be honest with you, I don't understand how the early day stuff that I end up doing can trip stuff up much later on. But gaming, it did exceptionally well with gaming. We had a nice boost on every single one of the games. And the really big graph, that's the CPU graph at the top. So that's the Gears of War CPU benchmark. And it did very, very well with that one. So, moving on to a conclusion and all that kind of stuff, it's a very pretty board. I would say that it's for those of you out there that want to kind of tweak and play. My CPU was the limitation, because you do get to a point where heat becomes an issue. Now 8-pack and Debauer are offering de-lidded and even silver topped. So the IHS on the top, they can whip that off and replace it with a silver one. But anyway, you can get de-lidded CPUs. I would say if you're going to end up with something like this and you really want to push the boat out, then it wouldn't hurt you to at least consider something like that. Or maybe de-lidding your own one, because I have shown you when 8-pack did mine at EGX, or rather he did my 7980XE at EGX. So there's a good kind of thing that you can go to there for some bullet points and see how it can be done. So with this kind of level of board, if you really do want to up the ante, that would be where I would be heading. I'd also say that if I'd had a de-lidded chip, then I probably could have got 5.1 stable on mine at least. The other thing that you need to think about, because I know there's already people screaming at the screen, why have you not de-lidded it already? If I de-lid the processor, then that means that it's technically not the same processor anymore. So every board, because I use the same CPU on every one of the board reviews, the other boards that we test after this point will obviously sit higher in the graphs, because I'm likely to be able to get better overclocks out of them. So I have to keep it fair, and we have to keep the same CPU as it arrived the day that I got it. If I could get another one, then I might be able to, well, if I could get another one, I would de-lid it. It's no that ifs, ands or buts. But that's the reason why we can't do it with this, because you have to keep the reviews fair. Imagine if I'd done this review with a de-lidded one with a silver top from 8-pack or Debauer, and then the Asus just topped every single one of the graphs. It could cause an absolute feces storm with people saying that I'd done it just to try and make it look good. But that's kind of the level that I think you would be wanting to go with this. But it works. The BIOS is good. The load line calibration works properly as well, which I'm very happy to kind of say about it. The BIOS is good, so there's lots of kind of plus points about it. At the end of the day, it's an OC3D Enthusiast Award, because let's face it, it's an enthusiast spec board. It's just a shame that you have to go to such manual levels to be able to extract the VRM temps from it, which in all honesty, they're amazing, and it's something that I think we should be shouting about a little bit better. It's kind of one of those ones where Asus are trying to keep quiet about how good the VRM temps really are, and you would expect it to be the other way around, yet it's not. It's because they're actually really good, especially when I've had other boards overheating at this point, and this is kind of like half the temps. It's ridiculous. So anyway, VRMs are all good, performance are all good, lights, you can make your own mind up about it, and it's definitely got more to offer than a retail CPU can give. So if you're willing to get a de-lid or de-lid your own one, go down that risky avenue, I think it could be quite cool, and it'd certainly be nice for a weekend project as well, because I would love to do it. But anyway, so that is the Apex review, finally. And what I'm going to end with as well is the formula is due today as well.